Well, hello, it looks like this is working. I'm streaming a new way I never have before. Um, so I think this is working. Let me sign. Oh, it looks like I just sign into chat so I can see your comments this new way. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna sign in now. This is gonna be awesome. It's gonna be rad McTad time. Um, okay, there we go. I'm gonna do one more thing to sign into chat. You can't see what I'm doing, so you're just watching me say stuff. If you're watching this after the fact, maybe just skip ahead a minute or so. Okay. It looks like I'm in a chat. If any of you, someone, as soon as you hear this, go ahead and just type something in the chat so I know that you made it in. So I know the chat's working just fine. Okay. I think I got everything set up just great. We're good to go here. I'm very happy, very, very, very happy to celebrate the season change with you. As we settle in here, I feel something really profound inside myself. Very joyful. Thank you all for joining me. I I'm assuming I'm feeling something from you all, and I appreciate that. I'm getting teary eyed. Um, yay! Okay. It looks like people are saying hi. I can see the chat. I can see Will's message, and I can see Brendan's message. So that's awesome. To get started, I'd like to remind you all we're gonna follow our usual tradition. So in the chat, please post how you've grown in the last 28 days. It was the increased understanding season. Tell me how you've grown, and I'll be very happy to see those things and celebrate them. While I'm waiting for people to type, I'll tell you how I've grown. This is so special to me. This is a really special time of growth. I have had some very challenging experiences this last 28 days. I am so grateful for those challenging experiences. I have had more than one opportunity to make a mistake that really hurt someone else. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to hurt anyone else. But twice I've made a mistake that felt like a betrayal to someone else. And then I've had the opportunity to make it better. And when I have done this, when I've made this better with people, I have chosen to apply a lesson I started learning a year ago. So a year ago in December, in 2023 in December, I had an experience that taught me to be radically honest and radically accountable, to not hold them. I learned that I'm super scared of being at odds with other people. And so I'm super scared of feeling guilty because I'm my own worst critic and I don't want to feel guilty. So I'm often dishonest. In my life, I've often been dishonest. And like, rather than really take accountability for things, I've only sort of half taken accountability. And I've sort of lied to myself and to other people about what I actually did and only shared part of the truth and not taken full accountability for things to make myself look better. And I decided a year ago in December that I was done doing that. And it's taken, I guess, this long to really live that. I had two opportunities this month where I made a choice that hurt someone. And as soon as I realized I had done that, I very quickly went to the person I hurt and was completely honest. I said, this is exactly what happened. And I was radically accountable and radically honest about it. And that was really painful. It hurt a lot. The people, when I was honest with them, it wasn't like they were like, "Oh, thank you for being honest." They were like, "You did what?" And they were angry, right? And in both instances, it took some time to heal, and I had to learn to be patient with the person because I was ready to be. I was radically honest and ready, like, "Great, I'm being radically honest. Let's let's make this better now." And they're like, "I'm not ready to make it better. I just barely learned this. And I need time to be angry." So it's important for me to learning to, like, when I'm radically honest, to give the other party time to be angry and work through their feelings. And that patience is hard for me, but it's important. And I feel like this whole thing has to do with it definitely has to do with the communication virtue, right? Of like on it that sort of honesty is part of communication, but it also has to do with increasing understanding because I'm giving them like pure good information and then inviting them to do the same back for me. And so it's like we really are understanding each other instead of just pretending to understand each other. Right? So many times my relationships in my life, and this is probably true of a lot of people in my experience, is we don't really take care of things, right? We have like a dispute and we're scared to go all the way there and dig everything up. And so we only sort of like talk about the issue and we come to a workable piece and then continue with the workable piece, but don't really take care of it. And then it comes up again. But in these situations, I was like completely open. I bore my whole soul. I invited the other person to do the same, and I chose to just fully listen to them and let them say whatever they wanted to say and choose to just allow it and choose to really understand their feelings. And by doing this, I was able to really understand them, and they were able to really understand me, and then we could like really make things better. And one of these two instances, it's still a work in progress. Um, and so sometimes that's like sometimes one of them we still haven't completely resolved. We're still working on it. But that communication allows true understanding between parties, and everyone can really understand each other and move forward. The understanding season had a lot to do with forgiveness. I've learned because as you understand, you can forgive. Welcome, Charlie and Baby and Brendan. Really good to have you. Okay, so yeah, I have worked on radical accountability and complete honesty, and I love what it's doing for my life. Please celebrate with me. Huzzah! Will has started exercising again. Good job, Will. That's so great. I celebrate that. We celebrate that. Huzzah! The baby's sleeping. Don't say the huzzah loudly. Um, I hope my loud huzzah over the head isn't waking up a baby. Ooh, okay, well, I apologize. That's the case. I take radical accountability. um. Okay. If anyone else wants to go ahead and write in the chat how you have grown the last 28 days, I would love to hear about it. While I'm waiting for people to do so, I think I'll just throw out some other thoughts that come to me about this last season. Um, I think it's so important to understand other people's schema. I think it's interesting we had this season during the election. And I think the election is such a good example of how it's important. It's like more important the baby's very awake. That's good. It's more important to understand other people's schema than it is to be right. Like understanding each other's schema is going to do more to make the United States a great country than either person getting elected. And so it's just really important to like with the people that have a different political view than me or different political than you. It's really important instead of like I think instead of trying to convince those people of anything, it's just so important to understand what it is that they would understand them rather than try to convince them of anything. Welcome, Charlotte. It's good to have you. Feel free to put in the chat any way you want us to celebrate how you've grown this season. We'd love to hear it. Um, I'm going to move forward and start talking about this next season. And but as I do so, um, if you have other things you want us to celebrate, anyone, please add them in. We'll pause to celebrate those things. Oh, here's one. Jamie says, I've been letting go of hard things in relationships by having crucial conversations in order for healing to happen. This has helped me feel so much love for others. That is wonderful. Huzzah! Charlie said, or I don't know if this is Brendan or Charlie, someone in that home says, uh, felt a lot of emotions, felt a lot and learned about myself, got through it with the help of others. Brendan. Oh, that's Brendan. um, I'm so glad, Brendan, that you were able to feel those emotions and learn and that other people were there for you. Huzzah! Huzzah for you and huzzah for the people that were there to help you. With emotions, I've had a few experiences. I've had 3 experiences in the last few months that have, in 3 different parts of my life, just felt like it was as bad as it could get. Um, my teaching job that I do announced that there's like budget cuts happening, and so my pay was cut, and that's kind of scary to have your pay cut down when you're like barely making it. So that was kind of scary. Um, I've had some experiences like really important relationships to me where those relationships felt like threatened. Like some of the most important relationships felt threatened. Um, I've had some experiences where people have challenged my own like spiritual authority. I've had experiences where other people have like been doubtful that I could have the spiritual experiences I say I can have, and they have like uh, sort of like felt like they were like throwing a lot of shame and stigma towards me because of that. And both those 3 experiences hit on 3 different parts of me. One of them made me feel like my money situation could never get any worse. One of them made me feel like my relationships could never get any worse. And one of them made me feel like my experience, my spirituality could never get any worse. Those are kind of like the 3 most important things in my life, the 3 big things. So that was those 3 experiences were really scary. But what I learned from those experiences each time, what I kind of learned from it was it got so low and so bad, and I just felt so awful. I didn't think I could feel any worse about anything. And then in that space, I was able to say, "Oh, this is as bad as it gets. That's okay. I can do it." And it made me think of Jesus on the cross and how when Jesus was on the cross, he said, "Father, Father, why hast thou forsaken me?" And I think what's going on there is that Jesus, even when Jesus was suffering in the garden, the night before, an angel came and strengthened him. So even when he was suffering in the garden, he still had help. But on the cross, it was in order for Jesus to do what Jesus needed to do, it was important for him to discover what he could do on his own. And so it was important for Jesus, it was important for the Father to withdraw, like that oneness. Like Jesus, had experienced perfect oneness with everything, but it was important for that oneness with God to be withdrawn from Jesus for a short time, so that he could discover what he himself is made of, so he could learn that he's enough by himself. And then by that means, because as we become one with Jesus, he can share that with us. Like we can become one with him, and then he can, in a spiritual way, share with us that feeling of I'm alone, I'm enough by myself, because he learned that about himself, and then he can give it to us. And that's what I've learned is these 3 experiences that just felt like they couldn't be any worse than they were, where I felt so alone and so abandoned and so like the world was falling apart. My emotions were so hard. I thought about Jesus on the cross, and I realized, and I asked for help from Jesus on the cross to like feel what to discover what he discovered, for him to share with me the discovery he made about himself on the cross, and that was like shared with me, and I learned from those 3 really hard experiences that I'm okay, and I learned that I'm enough by myself when I felt so alone and things were so hard, and I learned that as hard as it can get, it's something I can do. We'll probably have harder stuff in the future. I'll have to learn again on other levels, but that's where I'm at right now. Um, I hope that's helpful to you, anyone listening. Um, let's Thank you for your love, Brendan, and for your expression of awesomeness. Um, I'm gonna do this. Watch this. I have this little magic trick I can do. I'm gonna pull this, and it reveals stuff that you couldn't see before behind there. Okay. Here are the 13 seasons. We're gonna go to season number 9. Talk about honing perception. That's what we're moving on to now. And look, I can put this. I can put myself. This is gonna be cool. I'll put myself over in this area right here. We don't need this part. There we go. Look, I'm right there, and then and then you can still read this over on the other side. That's pretty cool. Okay, so we have lots of principles here related to honing perception. There's 9 of them to be precise. Um, let's talk about what these principles are principally helpful to us. First off, I really believe that when it comes that the point the part of the point of virtue is connection. Like virtue exists when we live these 12 or 13 virtues, it creates like the best case scenario for connection to happen. It's like we live them, and we live them, it creates like the perfect circumstances to make connection most likely to happen. But connection isn't something you can force. Connection just kind of has to happen. So it's not like living virtue leads to connection. It's more like living virtue invites connection, and connection just kind of happens. And connection is where life is at. When we feel connected to others, we feel like things are like working. I feel that connection, I think, is the eudaimonia the Greeks talked about, like the life well lived. I think it's the life of connection. When you feel connected to your soul, and connected to God, connected to other people, and connected to nature, that's when you feel most alive. And um, with the other 11 virtues, it can often be really easy to see how they're about connection, right? Um, it's obvious how communication helps us connect, I think. It can be, it's easy to figure out that the way we use our agency is going to help or discourage connection. The healing or solving problems season, of course, that's about connection, right? Because when we disconnection with people, we need to heal it, right? And love, it's so obvious how love is about connection. This season can be a little harder to understand how it's about connection, but I think one way to understand, I think there's a lot of ways this season's about connection, but one way to understand it is that when we focus on our perception, we get really good at being aware of what we're perceiving. It helps us come into the present moment. And it's in the present moment that we can connect with others. Connection happens in the here and now. It doesn't happen in the future or the past. Connection happens now. And so if I'm like with people, but in my brain I'm in the future or the past, I'm not really with them. I'm really present with them, and so it's hard for connection with them. So these 9 virtues can really help us hone in on the present moment. Um, which one do we want to talk about? Let's see here. No, not that one. Not that one. This one. Okay. Interpret what you sense. Okay. When we have, it's really important to correctly interpret what our senses are telling us. If we misinterpret it, it can create all kinds of problems. Right. For example, if with my senses I see some people walk, say I see 2 of my friends walking together, and they look over and see me and then laugh, I might interpret what I saw and heard to mean that my friends are laughing at me, and then that interpretation will lead to disconnection with them. But that might not be a correct interpretation of what I sensed. Perhaps they were telling a joke, and then I walked by and they glanced my way and then laughed at the joke they were already telling, and I completely misinterpreted it. This happens all the time, where we interpret what our senses tell us, usually based on our past experience. So, and our past experience is often informed by our trauma. So, if I've had traumatic experiences, then I'm on guard against those same things because I don't want it to happen again. So once I've had trauma, I'm extra on guard against that kind of stuff. And so when people do things and I notice them doing it, and they say things and I hear it, they do something, I see it, right? When those things happen, I'll tend to interpret it in the way my trauma tells me to interpret it to try to protect myself. And it's really important to be self-aware of that and careful about that. It's really helpful to not just make up stories, but clarify them. You can say to people things like, this just happened and I was imagining this. Can you help me understand? And if you're on the other side of that, I recommend being honestly accountable and maybe they did interpret it partially correct. And if they did, I recommend being like, you know what? I was doing that. I'm sorry. How can we make this better in our relationship? Let's figure, how did that affect you? Help me understand, work through it. Or, they can say, or they might say, oh, that's not what's happening. This was happening instead. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you don't go around like stuck in that brain space of being frustrated about what happened when it wasn't even necessary. Um, that can help a lot. Another principle here that can help with connection is number 9. Um, it says here, master the nuances of perceptual memory. There's a lot going on here. So we don't. Here's one way to talk about this principle. Science has shown, like studies have shown, that we don't remember what happened. We remember the story we tell. So if you see or hear something and you experience something with your senses, since they're so tied to experience, right? Uh, we don't if we don't have senses, it's hard to experience much. So your senses are really important to experience things. So we have an experience, we experience it with our senses, and then after we experience it, um, whatever story we tell generally will be the story that we remember. Um, if we don't tell the story at all, we'll likely forget it. So like if like, and it can be how we tell it to ourselves. So we have an experience and we tell the story to ourselves a certain way, or tell it to someone else a certain way. We'll actually our memory of what we saw and heard will actually change to match that, and it'll be like bonkers because we might talk to someone else who told the story afterwards differently, and they'll remember something different. Or if we don't tell the story at all, like if we don't write it down or retell it to ourselves at all, it just fades away into our memory and we forget it. We remember the story we tell, not what we actually perceive. This is really important. I'm coming to my mind is an experience someone shared with me when I was in college. One of my professors wanted to he was making this point. He was making a similar point to this at least, and he said that he was a missionary at one point in his life, and he went on a mission to Norway. And he shows up in Norway, and everyone's talking Norwegian, and he can't understand them very well. And it was a total mess. And he says that like there was this billboard with a naked person on it, and as a young 19-year-old kid who never seen naked people before, it like freaked him out. And I can't remember the whole details, but he told a bunch of stories about just crazy things that happened, like very extreme, bonkers things happened his very first day in Norway, and he was like, "This is a bizarre day. My life is all messed up now. This is messed up." But he was there sharing that whole day with another missionary. And years later, he talked to that same missionary. He said, "You remember my first day in Norway? Remember when this and this and this and this happened?" He told this person all these things, and that person said, "I don't remember any of that happening." And it was a bunch of like really bonkers stuff. I don't remember all the details. I just remember the naked person for some reason. But it was really really bonkers to him, and the other person didn't remember any of it. Who knows which of them is remembering the truth? They're each remembering the story they told, right? Yeah. Um, and oh, I'm really glad that really helps you, Will. That's so great. And so it's really important for us to be careful about this and not just assume that just because we remember something, it's true. Because we're remembering the story we told. And the story we tell, because I don't want to feel guilt. You don't want to feel guilt. I don't want to feel shame. You don't want to feel shame. So the story we tell is usually the story that makes ourselves look best. Like we skew the story as much as we feel comfortable to make ourselves look better, so that we don't have to feel guilt or shame. I'll tell you something. If from the beginning you tell the honest story, you're gonna have a more honest memory. And if from the beginning, once you tell, in my experience, then the quicker you tell the honest story, the quicker you get past guilt and shame. Because guilt and shame go away when a light is shined on them. When you shine the light of honesty on what happened, you just take accountability. Guilt and shame go away a lot faster. So you can either deal with guilt and shame by lying or being honest to who you need to be honest to. And the honesty and honesty is going to result in the better result. But if something happened a long time ago and a lot of time has passed and the whole time you've been telling yourself a certain story and you're trying to resolve it later, I would be careful about trusting your memory too careful. If the other person remembers it differently than you, I would be open-minded to what they're saying. And keep in mind that their memory might be skewed too, because they're probably telling the story a different way to make themselves feel better. So you're probably both wrong, honestly. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what really happened. What matters is that you solve the issue. So whatever story they're telling might not be the truth of what happened, but it is the truth of how they feel. And charity believeth all things. Charity believes that people are telling the truth about how they feel. So listen, believe their emotions and their perception, and take accountability for how you've affected them. Because whatever they're feeling is an effect that came from the situation. And then take time to share your own experience and invite them to do the same for you that you did for them. And you can resolve things with people and experience connection, and it'll be awesome. I feel like that's it for today. I could keep talking about something, but if I kept talking, I don't think it would matter. I feel like for this time, I've said and done at this point everything that I feel like I need to right now, unless anyone has a question. So if anyone has a question about any of this, please put it in the chat. And if there aren't any, I'm going to wait just a little bit for questions. And if there aren't any questions, then maybe it's time for us to. Sometimes these go up to an hour. Maybe it's time to stop at 30 minutes so we can go have more time to go connect with people in our lives. But I'll wait just a second, see if anyone has a question. If you have one, put it in the chat now. And while you're waiting, just notice what your senses are telling you. Practice being in the present, noticing what you see and hear and smell and feel. I think we'll call this the end. If you do have a question later, feel free to reach out to me directly with it. And enjoy this season. Enjoy it very much. I'm excited to hear your report in 28 days.